This is Unique Smiles, the Facial Paralysis Podcast, and I'm your host, Brian April. Welcome to Unique Smiles, the Facial Paralysis Podcast, which is now available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and YouTube. Search Unique Smiles or search Facial Paralysis Podcast. And if you want to follow me, I am on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube at Comedy Brian, Brian. My guest today is Steve Kenny, who got facial paralysis due to nerve trauma resulting from a car accident. I've known Steve on the forums for a couple of years, and thanks for being on here.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. So tell us a little bit about how you got facial paralysis.
So I was in a what I thought at the time was a pretty minor car accident, which I just celebrated the 5-year anniversary of that. So it was December of 2014. I was driving and somebody backed their car into the road and hit my car. And I got, what seemed like minor whiplash at the time. The car had to be towed from the scene just due to some front end fender damage, but I really didn't think anything of it. And it was right around Christmas time. I was traveling to see family. And so I really didn't think anything of it, didn't seek medical attention at the time. I had some neck pain, some shoulder pain, but I really didn't take it seriously and didn't think anything of it. I had called my physician and I had asked them questions, and they said, if it seems to get worse, come in. And it kind of waxed and waned. That's been kind of my story, is waxing and waning. And after 9 weeks, I had a TIA, which is a transient ischemic attack. It's like a warning stroke. But at the time, I was 32, in good health, and I thought I just had a really bad headache. And then about 24 hours later, I had severe ocular pain only on my left side, started having trouble swallowing, and then I couldn't swallow at all. And my wife came home from work, tried to get me to eat pistachios, salted pistachios, which to this day I still can't eat or smell pistachio without it triggering a lot for me personally. And I couldn't swallow those. And at that point, she rushed me to the hospital. They did a CT scan and they determined that I had what's called a vertebral dissection, which is one of the arteries that runs on the side of your neck had gotten pinched in the car accident, and a clot released to my brain. And then the clot caused a stroke, and then one of the results of that stroke was facial paralysis on the left side of my face.
Wow, I haven't heard that one before. So that wasn't even from the accident itself; it was the buildup of the pinched nerve afterwards.
Well, so the accident caused the vertebral artery to pinch, and then it just took 9 weeks before that clot formed, and then ultimately released to the brain. So it was causally connected to the accident, but it didn't occur right at the time. So that's kind of, it's pretty far attenuated when you look at the amount of time between the incidents, but they are kind of causally related. The way that this type of stroke actually can happen often for people is minor car accidents, or women when they're getting their hair cut and colored, because they've got their neck back in the sink and then they get whipped forward in the chair. And they don't realize what happened to their neck until weeks later when a clot releases and they have, what's actually is considered a TBI, a traumatic brain injury. That's what the stroke is. I've learned way more about this than I ever wanted to by being through it, but I'm definitely a little more educated than most people about it now.
That is, that is the absolute truth. I know way more about facial paralysis and different types than I ever thought I would. I just remember back even before 10 years ago, I was like, I had no idea, and I was completely ignorant to most of it. So tell me, what was your mental state like after you just get facial paralysis? You go and you have the stroke, and then all of a sudden, boom.
So it was kind of that flight or fight situation, and I found myself retreating. I live in Boston, Massachusetts, in New England, the United States. I'm surrounded by some of the best hospitals in the world, so I'm extremely lucky to be geographically where I am. One of the places where I did kind of 5 weeks of rehab after being released from Mass General Hospital was a place called Spalding. Beautiful views of the Charlestown Navy Yard. And instead of looking out the window, I found myself asking for the blinds to be closed. And that kind of was made me realize that mentally I was not doing as well as I should be. But I didn't want to see people outside running, walking their dogs, playing on the playground, driving the car, all those things I thought I'm never going to be able to do because of the stroke, because of facial paralysis, because of ocular issues. I was nonverbal for a while. I couldn't eat. I had a G tube, and I really thought this is kind of the end of the road. And I found myself retreating, wanting the doors closed, the windows closed. I did my OT, PT, speech and swallow therapy, but I really, I found myself retreating rather than realizing that what I really needed to be doing was to empower myself and to be, Spalding's motto is find your strength. And I found myself needing to find that strength to make sure that I was doing what I needed to be doing.
And I think most people can relate to that who acquire facial paralysis. You definitely do retreat and hide. Was there any timeline that they gave you that this might go away, or did you know that it was going to be permanent at that time?
I was actually told that I might never, I had vision issues that I might never see again, that I might never swallow again, that I had a stage of aphasia, which is inability to speak. I couldn't formulate words for a while. I was nonverbal. I was NPO, meaning I couldn't eat at all. I was aspirating and had a suction tube to remove fluid from my mouth and my throat. And I was told, we don't know. And that is like, what I do for work, I'm an attorney, and I don't like somebody telling me we don't have an answer to something. I want to know there is an answer. I want to be able to advocate. I want to be able to do that. And being told we don't know what that endpoint is was extremely difficult for me. And I said, well, if you don't know what that endpoint is, then I'm going to decide what my endpoint is. And it's going to be once I've done everything and exhausted every resource and advocated for myself to make sure I'm getting the best care. And I'm doing personally everything that I can do to not hinder and to expedite my recovery.
With all of those health problems going on, were you still focused on your face the way your face was looking, or was that kind of like that doesn't even matter at this point?
I think the two things I focused on most were that my face didn't work because you're constantly in this world. You're judged. I mean, pardon the pun, you're judged on face value. You're judged. Your face is the first thing people see about you. And it really, it tells expression. You communicate even non-verbally so much with your face. And then couple that with, I'm in a room surrounded by mirrors. I'm doing speech and swallow therapy with a mirror in front of me all the time. Felt like I was being constantly reminded of what was wrong with my face. And that was very difficult. The other thing that was really hard was the lack of mobility and uh, feeling that I couldn't be independent because I was in a bed where they had a motion sensor on it, so I couldn't even get out of bed with a walker or a wheelchair without somebody in the room with me. And it was very hard to think to myself at 32 years old that I might not walk again.
Yeah, that's pretty scary. So, how does that impact you? You said you're married. How does that impact your marriage? How does that impact your relationship with your family and your friends and that sort of thing?
So for me, had been married for 5 years. My wife and I've been together since college. She's been an amazing support, but I think what was hard for her was to be able to sit back and this is completely out of her control, and a chunk of it is out of my control. But she's trying to keep me motivated to do my therapy and get rest, nutrition, focus on my OT, PT, things like that. But she's also got to be taking care of herself. She works full time, so her career, our house. We had actually, ironically, just adopted a dog a couple of weeks before this all happened. So there was a lot that was being asked of her. But what I found is that this could make or break facial paralysis, a stroke, any major medical event. I feel like really tests a marriage. And we came out stronger than ever. She's my best friend. Our communication is to how we feel, um, fears, hopes, dreams, all that. We've really been much more open with each other about how we're feeling about things. We also are very career focused, and it allowed us to step back from our careers and focus on, all the money in the world, all the career advances, all that doesn't matter if you're not here for each other. And so we really were able to kind of step back and say, we need to focus on ourselves and our relationship as well as the recovery and all that. And I thought to myself when I was in a wheelchair, I thought, maybe I'll never walk again, maybe I'll never run again. All these what's not going to happen, but I could still make my wife laugh. And the first time I heard her laugh, said to me, you know what? If I can make her laugh, we're going to be okay. And it's somebody, Brian, I mean, you're a comedian. I deal with trauma. I deal with everything in life with humor.
Hmm.
And so me knowing that I could still make her laugh, that meant the world to me in terms of the success and, how we were going to get through things.
Yeah, that's absolutely huge. I agree 1,000% on that. What was your initial course of treatment? Obviously, you were doing the therapy for the swallowing and the speech, but as far as anything else that you were looking at.
So I looked at, my thing was, I had OT, PT, speech and swallow therapy. When I was at Spalding, and then when I was discharged, I continued that on an outpatient basis, and I also incorporated acupuncture. And I'm not a doctor; I can't say one way or another, but I will say, for me personally, I feel like it helped a lot in terms of um, swallow therapy and fluidity of movement and fine motor control. And so that was a huge thing for me. And I'd say about a year and a half out from the actual accident and the facial paralysis, I was lucky enough to see Dr. Hadlock, which a lot of people in the facial paralysis community know, at Mass Eye and Ear Institute in Boston. Dr. Hadlock, Dr. Jowett, and physician's assistant Carrie Shanley have been instrumental in kind of my recovery process. So I did the sural nerve transfer from my leg to bridge across my face, and then I did the gracilis muscle transfer, which has given me, movement, and at rest my face is symmetrical. I can smile with closed lips, and it looks good. It's what I've realized is the way it looks now, it's never going to necessarily look the way it did 5 years ago. All the surgeries, all the efforts, all the PT isn't necessarily going to bring back what I had, but what I have now, it's really made me so grateful for. And then I also, every 4 months, I do Botox on the good side of my face to create facial symmetry with the paralyzed side.
Do you have any synkinesis or anything like that?
I don't. I'm lucky. The only thing that I have is sometimes the eyelid on the paralyzed side of my face. Sometimes I was lucky enough that I didn't have to have a weight installed or anything like that. But sometimes that becomes irritated, either stress, driving in a car with the windows down. But overall, I'm lucky that I haven't had any other complicating factors.
So you mentioned Botox, and I get Botox as well. As a guy, I never thought in a million years I would end up getting Botox. It just always seemed like it was this really vain thing to do, and there's this whole medical reasoning for it that I've since learned. Was that kind of weird for you to get Botox, especially on your non-affected side?
It was I think you made the perfect point. It was weird for those two reasons. I felt weird going in and saying, doing something that to me seemed solely focused on vanity. Dr. Hadlock published a very interesting piece about quality of life and mental health as related to Botox injections on people with facial paralysis. And it was a really great article to read, and it really talks about how having that facial symmetry and using Botox for a medical purpose, it's more than just the cosmetic looks, and it's how much deeper it goes. But it was kind of weird because I always think of Botox as, the frozen face, the
Hmm.
Hollywood Kidman, those type of people. And it was weird to see that done in a medical environment. I have mine done either by Dr. Hadlock, Dr. Jout, or physician's assistant Shanley. To be doing it in a medically supervised environment, I'm not going to get that weird frozen look. I'm just trying to balance out. And then the other point you made is having it done on the quote unquote good side of my face. That seemed very odd to do. But I remember the first time I had it done, I thought of one of the stand-up routines you did about looking inquisitive, and
Mhm.
it made me think of having uniform eyebrows across the top rather than one that didn't work and one that was kind of almost looked like it was overcompensating for the paralyzed side of my head.
You know what's really funny about that? You mentioned that joke, which I talk about. The eyebrows. I can only raise one eyebrow, so I don't look surprised. I look inquisitive. When I originally wrote that, my affected side, the eyebrow was lower than my non-affected side. And after a while, I've had some issues with my frontalis muscle, which is the forehead. It's gotten tighter and it's raised that other eyebrow. So now that eyebrow is actually higher than my non-affected side. So when I go to do the bit, it almost evens them out now. And so I have to like tilt my head a little more. It's just weird how that shifted over the years, where it was my eyebrow was lower and now it's higher. It's just a very
What I will point out is how much I butchered your joke when trying to retell it just now. If my sister listens to this, she knows how bad I am at retelling other people's jokes. And this is a prime example of I said you didn't look inquisitive, and so I butchered the punchline, and I apologize
Oh, that's
to you.
okay. It happens all the time. I butcher them too. What kind of impact do you have on your daily life still as a result of facial paralysis?
Well, I think one of the things I kind of touched on is photos. That has been something that's extremely difficult in the kind of the social media, the selfies, everything, and everyone having a camera phone now. I just constantly, for so long, felt worried about getting my picture taken. And that's something that is still not, it's not something I love having done. But I've realized that this is my new normal, and maybe it'll change. I'm gonna get older, I'll lose more hair, I'll gain and lose weight, but this is right now, and so I need to be, accepting of getting those pictures taken. What I've learned to do over, I'd say maybe the past year or so, is kind of when somebody takes a picture, I say take a few of them. It's not like, when I was a kid where you'd only have 30 on a roll. It's like, we all have iPhones or whatever now. I can ask for multiple pictures from different angles to be taken so that I can, to activate my muscles, I can clench my teeth, I can try and open my eyes more. So being able to feel comfortable saying to people, hey, do you mind taking a few pictures? That's been something that's been very kind of uncomfortable for me, that I've tried to learn ways to cope with that, because I really for so long said, don't take pictures of me. There's about 3 years of my life where there are no pictures at family events or anything, and everyone was always accepting of and respectful of my wishes. But now I look at it and say, oh, I was there. I was at Christmas, but there's no picture of me there. And I want that memory to be there and to be captured. And although I might not love the picture, it's still there as a reminder. So
You just hit on something that I've spoken about a couple of times, I think, on this podcast or just in talking with people. And it's because a lot of people really do have struggle with pictures. If you can make it not about you, and like you said, like you just said, it's about the memory. So if I take a picture with my mom and she looks at the picture, she doesn't see my facial paralysis. She sees her son, or someone
right.
sees their husband or their brother or their nephew or whatever it is. And they're not just going, oh, look at their face, look at their face. And I feel like I've kind of learned to go, oh, it's kind of selfish to take that away from them and from you, really, because you don't have that memory. And, you just go, oh, that was Christmas. That was a wonderful time. Oh, that was our trip to Italy. That was such an amazing time. And to take that from somebody, your friends don't see your face that way. Your friends just see you. Your parents and your family just see you. So I think I strongly encourage people, if you can try to change your mind frame a little bit about that. It makes taking pictures a lot easier. Professionally, it's a little different, and I always have like a joke. Oh, I got a good side, and I
Yeah,
make sure I get on my good side. And I know there's a couple of poses that I can do, and I'm sure you do the same thing, where you go, okay, this is my pose, and like you said,
yeah.
ask for a couple extra pictures. So I think that's a good alternative and good advice for people. Um,
I love
yeah, go
I
ahead.
love the point I love the point that you made about, if you take a picture with your mom looks at it and sees Brian. She doesn't see the facial paralysis. And what I think is, for so long, I was thinking every time I saw somebody or somebody saw me for the first time, that was all they were seeing. And I think we all are our worst critics and most judgmental of ourselves, and realizing that most people aren't looking at those, quote unquote flaws the same way that we are. They aren't as obsessive about that as we are. And realizing that, when I see people that I haven't seen in 10 years, you know, it's, oh, you look different. And I just, again, I use humor, and it's, oh, you mean I have less hair, or like, I weigh more. And, they might be talking about facial paralysis. They might be talking about 100 other things,
Right.
but realizing that most people aren't judging us the same way we judge ourselves. And we need to be easier on ourselves. And it's also, this whole process has made me much more sensitive to other people, and the struggles that they may have gone through that I don't even know. And I feel like I kind of try and be more sensitive and cut people a little more slack than maybe I did before.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And we talked a little bit before we started recording about the nature of being vain, because that's just our, like you said, that we just see our face. Our face is out there. It's the first thing people see, and it can be tough to kind of deal with that loss, and all that focus is on me, and how can I look better, and how can I look normal. And it's just a really strange dynamic that we have to kind of shift through.
Yeah, and I think that this whole process made me say, okay, not only does my face encompass who I am, it's a piece of the pie. Just like, having a stroke, having facial paralysis. Well, I'm also a husband. I'm also a brother. It's like I wear a lot of proverbial hats, and realizing that this is part of my story, but it doesn't define completely who I am. And I can't, but it's only if I allow it to kind of encompass me mentally. That's when I really find myself focusing on that. I need to step back and kind of refocus on something else that's positive in my life, and realize to find gratitude in everything. And that's what I've really tried to be focused on, is that it's the little things of, when I couldn't, hey, I couldn't drink water for the longest time. I had a G-tube, and now I can eat, now I can drink. And that's a victory. And, my eye used to not close all the way, and I had to use an adhesive weight. And now my eyelid closes on its own. So it's like things aren't perfect, but there's still so much in my life that is amazing. And that's what I have to focus on.
Well, and to kind of play off of what you just said, there are a lot of people who are going through it right now that may be in like a really dark time. And I know I had a really dark time. I know you had a really dark time. What started to change for you to start to see past to the pity party, or whatever it was? Like, what events were kind of there that started to turn towards acceptance? Because you obviously have a really great attitude about it now, and you have seems like you've accepted it very well and are doing great. So, but what kind of helped lead you there?
So I kind of try to incorporate like four rules in my life going forward. Um, and they're constantly evolving, but there's four main focuses for me. And the first one, which was so important, was to set relevant and achievable goals. So it's like when I first came home, I was walking with a cane, and I was like, I've got to get up on the ladder, and I got to clean the gutters. I've got to rake the yard. I took one swipe with the rake, and I almost fell over. I came into the kitchen, and I love to cook, and I tried to pull out the big Le Creuset Dutch oven, and I couldn't lift it up. And those, being able to do some cooking, being able to do some yard work. Maybe it was going to be just doing a window box. Maybe it wasn't going to, I knew I ultimately wanted to be able to mow my lawn again, climb up on a ladder, but I needed to set relevant and achievable, like small goals, and work towards those. And then one thing we've already touched on was to address those emotional changes. There's so much of this is, it could be chemical, it could be spiritual, emotional, so much kind of gets thrown our way. And being able to ask for help became something that, and I still struggle with on a daily basis, but being able to, you know, ask my wife for help, call the doctor and ask for something, talk to my paralegals at work, ask them to do, being able to do that rather than not being able to do it myself or not do it as well as I could have, but to be able to reach out and ask people, it's so cliche, but asking for help is to me is a way of being strong. And then to be informed, and I think you and also a couple other people in our group, especially Elizabeth, really epitomize what being informed about services, about causation, about the community, and about what your own personal journey has been is so important in terms of finding your strength and being able to self-advocate because our spouses can help us, doctors can help us, but we have to want that help, we have to accept it, we have to seek it out ourselves. And then stupid little things like our routine, like I got so excited when I came home and was brushing my teeth. Because I couldn't brush my teeth in the hospital. And doing that little routine and then building on that has really helped me on a daily basis.
I sorry, I didn't mean to laugh during the brushing the teeth, but it just reminded me of the same thing. I would when I first got it, I would brush my teeth and I would go to spit and I couldn't spit and it would just roll out of my mouth. And I was
Yeah.
like, this is this is a good look. So yeah, you
But
just
well, I think what was funny is I wasn't allowed to brush my teeth in the hospital because the water would run down and go into my lungs. So
mm,
I wasn't allowed to brush. So I got so excited when I could do something as simple as
yeah.
brush my teeth at home. And then it turned into, okay, I can take a shower. I can cook, chop up the vegetables while my wife is cooking. And it really, like, my life has gotten back, I'd say 95% physically to what I had before. I do miss that 5%. And I kind of do still more in that, but I look at that 95% that I have and also the things that I've gained. I've gained friendships within the facial paralysis community. My marriage with my wife is stronger than ever. My career actually got so much more rewarding because my definition of success in life has just shifted dramatically from what it was 5 years ago.
Yeah, I was just about to ask you, do you feel in somehow that it's I don't want to say a blessing, but it's you hear people who have cancer and then they say it was the best thing that ever happened to me because I learned to slow down and I learned to appreciate life and I learned to take life seriously and focus on my goals and go, after what I really want to do. Do you find that's kind of happened to you?
I don't know if I'd say I'm glad I have facial paralysis. I'm glad I've gone through what I have, but I'm happy and content with where I am in my life right now, and I don't think I'd be at the same place in my life right now had this not happened. So if taking it that way, I would say yes, I am glad for what I've gone through because it did teach me so much and make me reevaluate things in my life to be where I'm at now. But I sure as heck wish that I could be at this place, not having gone through the last 5 years. But I just don't know if I would be at this place had I not gone through all that. So it's kind of like I don't really 100%
Right.
know how to answer that.
Yeah, it's not so much that you're glad, but you've at least been able to find the silver lining to it.
Yeah, exactly. Like find the joy, find the gratitude, and just be able to realize again that rather than for so long I was focusing on that 5% of what I don't have and say, okay, I have 95%, but I've actually gained even more. So am I over 100% now? I don't know. It's very hard because my brain wants to quantify everything.
Hmm.
And what we've all been through, it's you can't really quantify it. And doctors have all these different metrics that they try and measure, facial movement on, facial this, and there are certain things emotionally that you just can't measure. And that's kind of where I'm at now. But I'm happy with my life. I'm lucky for all the blessings that I have, some of which are because of this, and my whole life has just completely changed over the last 5 years. But I have a good life today.
That's awesome to hear. So, last question for me, and I ask this to everybody. What advice do you have for people who just recently acquired facial paralysis and are struggling? What can you tell them?
I would say, it's kind of own how you're feeling. Um, Own this because it's hard. Like just recognize that it's a trauma, regardless of how you achieved and or how you received facial paralysis. It's a trauma and it's something that affects you physically and emotionally and mentally, and it affects every aspect of your life, and own that. But then also realize that everyone can try and help you and can try and do things, but you have to be willing to accept that help, and you also have to be willing to advocate for yourself and find that, to empower yourself with knowledge and to push yourself, but also realize that sometimes the best thing you can do is to rest and recover. And that was something that was hard for me, was always wanting to go, 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 and then realizing that rest and recovery is maybe what my body needs. And so that balance of owning how you feel, but also, and mourning that, but also then pushing forward and saying that you can't be stagnant. You have to be taking the next step forward in this journey, because it's a journey. Every day is different, and I don't know what my face is going to look like 5 years from now. And had this not happened, still wouldn't know what my face would look like today. I would have more. I sure as heck have more wrinkles because I wouldn't have Botox.
Right.
But that's the only definitive thing that I would know.
All right, Steve. Well, thank you so much for taking the time today and sharing your story and your wisdom. And I really enjoyed talking to you. And we'll have to do this again soon. And next time in back home, we'll have to get together and hang out a bit.